I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, with my fellow host, Osama Dahud, and a special guest today, Edreece Arghandiwal, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Oakland Roots Sports Club, Oakland Soul Sports Club, and Project 510. You're a busy guy, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me. You know, busy, but never busy enough to have positive conversations with great people. So thank you for giving me the platform. I'm excited to chop a little bit about what we're doing. And thank you for remembering the sports club part of the name.
That's right. That's right.
A lot of people just think we're a soccer team, but it's more than that. So I appreciate that.
I remember, I forgot exactly where, but I think it was a few years back. I read one of your interviews, and you made sure to specify that the SC is not soccer club. It's sports
Right.
club because obviously Oakland Roots and Oakland Soul, there's a lot more to it than just soccer. So I wanted to talk to you, obviously about your journey and co-founding the club or the clubs, I should say, but also, your journey growing up in the Bay,
Yeah.
playing soccer, how that influenced you, and how the Bay influenced you to this day. So you grew up in Oakland, correct?
Actually, all over the Bay Area, man. I was born in Oakland, raised, in Alameda for a few years, spent some time in the Central Valley, and then made my way back to the East Bay, back to Oakland, back to my origins, my roots. And yeah, we've just been all over the place, man. I mean, a part of the refugee immigrant story is that
Mhm.
our families are just trying to figure it out.
For
It's not,
sure.
we don't have the leverage of generational wealth. We don't have the leverage of knowing that we can live in a home for the rest of our lives and then pass it on to our kids. And so that basically made our families hop around the Bay Area until things could figure itself out. And I was very lucky to have just incredibly forward-thinking parents that were creative and successful and built a life for themselves as Afghan refugees, fleeing Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion. And yeah, man, just a privilege and an honor to be born in Oakland and to have that and to now be back, obviously, in the town and being here for several years now. And my wife works here, and we're just like,
Okay. So
we're
the
through
roots run deep.
roots run deep, and we're out here for sure.
Cool, man. Yeah, and I, so Idris and I, we go back to college. We were, buddies back in undergrad, shit, 15 years ago. It's a long time ago. And I know you didn't really have a traditional career path. I did some creeping on your LinkedIn, obviously. I saw that you were a bio and an econ major
Mm.
in undergrad. So how do you go from that to, co-founding a soccer club and some of the other things that you've done along the way?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to peel it back, like I've always been somewhat entrepreneurial. Like I've always wanted to try new things and put ideas out there. And that's probably, it goes back to my parents giving me the
Yeah, I was
ability.
going to say, did that come from your parents or was
Yeah,
that something you fostered on your own?
100%. I mean, I feel like people get it through their environment, but it's also largely in part by the, ideas that our families and the closest people around us instill in us. And they, like I mentioned, were just very forward thinking, creative people that always gave my sister and I the ability to do what we wanted. My sister played professional soccer at the highest level in the Serie A and the Bundesliga, was the captain of the Afghanistan national soccer team. And to have a Afghan young women play at the highest level, that takes a bit of forward thinking when we talk about our culture,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
for my father and my mother to be open and willing for my sister to do all the things that she wants to do. And similarly for me, it enabled me to experiment with a lot of different things, man. And I think we all result to becoming a doctor or becoming an engineer because it's the safest thing. It's all our families know. But then when I was able to open portals to different worlds to my family and show them that, hey, look, you can throw a concert and have Lil B and, Mr. Fab and all these cats come out to Davis and be able to like make money off of that and still do cool shit that's creative. all of a sudden a new portal of possibility opens and they start to believe you and they trust you, you know? And I'm very, very grateful for that, man. Getting into Davis obviously was by way of soccer. You know, I got recruited there.
Okay. That was my next question. I know
Yeah,
you mentioned your sister, so
yeah.
she played professionally and was on the Afghan national team. So the highest level you played was at the college level?
At the collegiate level, I did play semi-professional with the Bay Area Ambassadors out in Raimondi Park in West Oakland for a couple of years. And that's where actually, funny enough, like I played with Emra Clementa, who's now one of our captains for the Roots. And so like it's this crazy full circle moment now that we're working together kind of in different domains, but in a similar fashion. So yeah, it's been a journey for me when it comes to the game. I wish I could have become a pro. It was my lifelong dream. I ended up being obviously in a different capacity within the same sport. And it comes from my father, bro. Like in Afghanistan, he was a manager of a football club that was local. And it was called Store,
Oh, wow.
the club name.
Yeah.
And he led and managed teams and brought a sense of like structure and this like club mentality to a small town that he grew up in. And he brought that over to America as well when he was coaching myself and other Afghans in the local community. And so I kind of picked up a lot of the nuances of management and leadership from him, really watched him and learned about how to lead people in a way that leads to fruitful results. And all of that with the experiences I gained, man, just kind of led to where we're at. And obviously hella layers going into how
for sure.
we got there, but that's, in a nutshell, what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we stand on the shoulders of giants, man, with our parents that came from overseas and took risks and talking about wanting to be a doctor and engineer. I think they just want us to do the safe thing. So it's nice to see that you took risks and that you had your parents backing, because I know a lot of folks like us, first generation or second generation even, they're scared to take those risks because, of course, we don't know what our parents might think. So you talked about layers in, developing a club and all that. Let's start at like the first layer. When did you have the initial idea or the initial thought? When was it just a little thought in your brain, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, man. I mean, it kind of comes from a series of different ingredients that brought me to this point. Being born in Oakland, there's this inherent like connection to the city, despite wherever you go, right? Another example of this is like, I when you ask me what my ethnicity is, I say I'm Afghan. I don't say I'm American, because that's how it works, right? And that's how it functions.
It comes first in the hyphen too,
exactly, right? Exactly. But and the interesting thing here is that I've never actually been there. Right. But I have this idea of my connection to that place. And so despite moving around my whole life and, having experiences elsewhere, the being born in Oakland element really always brought me back to, I got to do something here, and, traveled around the world, did a lot of different things. I interned for Diddy for a little bit. I interned for Sean John. I
saw that. That was pretty cool.
By way of my cousin who worked there at the time and gave me the platform. And man, those experiences really opened my brain to like the things that are possible in this life, and specifically around the ability to market things to people and do it in a way that is meaningful. I think a lot of people put things out into the world, but they don't think about the impact of those things, whether it's words, products, services, etc., sports teams. They don't think about the impact that specific thing has on the people that believe in it, that want to invest their money in it. And, there is no greater responsibility and there is no greater culturally relevant thing than a sports identity, period.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about, like, I know there's haters of sports out there, but my question to them is like, man, like, how the fuck do you guys even function without a sports team. like
For better or worse, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, think about the impact the Warriors have had, right? Like just on the identity of the Bay Area. Let's just put that into perspective, right? You have one of the biggest brands in global sports and one of the biggest athletes in sports, possibly the GOAT in Steph Curry, making a very large impact in a way that changes people's lives, allows for people to come together, allows for economic stimulus in small to medium-sized businesses. I mean, the impact is so vast and large, and yet we're still denying the impact of sports, specifically soccer, right? Which is the domain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, man, like design, fashion, culture, art, Oakland, soccer, all of this kind of came to fruition when my prior startup was in downtown Oakland. It was important that we had a presence here and that I was trying to bring business into a town that I really loved and enjoyed. Didn't necessarily work. And I remember, leaning off of that and thinking, what's the next thing, right? And I'm playing in semi-professional teams here, in the SF leagues with Oakland Leopards, and I'm playing at Raimondi, and I'm running into all these different cats that are in the soccer space. And lo and behold, the idea was to do something in the East Bay area, specifically Oakland, that brought awareness to this sport, because we know whenever like Mexican teams come, whether it's Chivas or, Club America, like we sell out the Coliseum, 30, 40, 50,000 people. So
I saw them at Stanford, I think in 2009,
right.
It was packed house. It was
Right.
Club America versus Chelsea. It was probably, I don't know, 5% Chelsea fans. The rest was a sea of yellow.
Exactly, man. I went and saw Real Madrid and Club America in the ATT Park in San Francisco. Bro, like if it was just Real Madrid playing, I don't know, San Jose Earthquakes or Roots, it would be empty. But it's the Club America fans that really support and bolster it up. Which
the Mexicans roll deep, man. I saw them recently in Vegas. Club America versus Chelsea. It was like I was in Mexico. It was
some real shit. Exactly, man. And we have to recognize that one of the biggest populations here in Oakland is also the Mexican demographic. And this is their sport. You have to respect that and acknowledge that. And so for me, it was like, yo, there's no shortage of appetite here. This is a real thing. Oakland, California has the biggest Dia de los Muertos festival in Northern California, second biggest in California. And you're thinking there's 100,000 people that go to these events. There's no soccer team for people to support. I mean, it just made sense. And at the time as well, you guys, like the teams were leaving, right? Warriors were dipping. The Raiders were already out. Like there was no more of an opportune time to get into a market space in a meaningful way. And by that, I mean, not in a traditional sporting way. I'm a 33 now. 33-year-old Afghan American. I don't look like Steve Ballmer or Mark Cuban, bro. Like just a normal ass cat living in downtown Oakland with, trying to figure out my life. Right. And this is a different model. This is a European model. This is like how, small clubs in Europe are founded by people just going to the pubs and like talking to each other and thinking of things. And that's exactly how our concept came about. Is 5 or 6 of us co-founders all kind of had different assets and skill sets that we brought to the table. And, we launched in 2019. In July, we hired our first employee. We started to roll out an amazing partnership with Oaklandish on the merchandise side. And it was important for me to do that because I recognize.
How did that come about? Because I know that's one of the flagship, brands and, identities in Oakland. I didn't know about your partnership with them. I was in the store in downtown Oakland, I think in around 2019, and I saw the shirt, I saw the logo. Of course, I made sure to buy it. And I just thought,
thank you.
If you didn't know this was a soccer team, you'd be like, this is just a dope ass logo with a dope shirt, so I'm gonna buy that. And I'm sure that's part of your marketing and your vision. Yeah,
absolutely. People ask that all the time, bro, and they're just like, was that purposeful? And I'm like, absolutely. I mean, I don't wear any of these sports teams brands, like their merchandising, outside of game day. because 99.9% of them are like mad corny, or they don't look good, or they don't, you know? And so for me, I approach this as like, man, Oakland has such a strong brand and identity. Cats should be able to wear a Roots hoodie at Fashion Week in New York and not feel out of place. Dame Lillard should be able to wear a t-shirt during the playoffs and feel like it's normal. You know, Marshawn should be able to rock the hoodie during an interview and it's just normal. I mean, G-Eazy music videos, this thing's in there, right? Like, we wanted to create something that people could adhere to because of the principles of Oakland: diversity, inclusion, arts, culture, humanities, the color, the chip on the shoulder, the blue collar, you know, like everything that makes our identity who we are went into the rollout of the identity. And it was
and the way you
yeah,
incorporated Oakland's logo as well with the
exactly.
tree and all that, just
the storytelling and all that. And this is also like a R&D conversation about branding and identity, but you know, that was like 2.5 years of developing this crest that then we rolled out, got incredible reception of. You know, I sat down with Angela and Aaron from Oaklandish, who are, you know, amazing. You know, they built this concept of Oaklandish from nothing, you know, and they helped us kind of cheat code our way through this, because, you know, they had a database of thousands of people and we were able to get to thousands of people immediately because of that partnership. And I will say, man, I attribute our success in the early stages, and I continue to attribute it to them and their help throughout this process, because they took a bet on us. Imagine me going into a meeting saying, trust me, this is going to be the biggest sports club ever. And they're like,
yeah,
I'm spitting like, this is going to be the Barcelona of the United States, you know? And I mean, I truly believe this, but this is what they're riding on, and they believed in that, and it worked, you know? And so 1 in every 5 people that I meet in the streets, man, they don't even know it's a soccer team. But the trick is that when you educate them in that second or third touch point that this is a soccer team, all of a sudden you have a fan, because they're already rocking it and they're already advertising it. And so it was amazing that first year rolling out, man. It was a blessing, and to see people wearing all of it in the city, and then having our first game ever. And the anniversary of that was actually yesterday. You guys are like perfect timing on the podcast.
Oh, there you
go. And that was one of the most special days of my life, man. You know, imagine being born in Oakland, turning 30, on the way to the game. You're listening to Childish Gambino, you know, rapping about turning 30 in Oakland. I mean, it was the most like incredible synergy moment in my life. And to be there and see 6,000-7,000 people show up, you know, have local artists and musicians performing, soccer being played in the town meaningfully. I mean, that was everything to me. And I don't take it for granted. So since that moment, I'm like, we got to go hard every single day to make sure we live up to this name, you know, and we do it justice. So
for sure. And then you talked about like the brand identity and the logo. And I think like, for example, as a Raiders fan, I know that I've been around the world. I've seen the Raiders logo, the pirate, you know, in Egypt, in Barcelona, in Turkey, all these places where, again, people have no idea what it is, but they know it's cool. They like the logo, so they buy it. And then after that, you know, comes the exploration into, all right, what is this really? And then they dive in, and then, you know, just off your aesthetic and your brand, you can build, you know, a really strong bond with that person and that fan.
Man, that's such a good point. I think the Raiders identity is a case study, and all brands should look into how the Raiders did it. I mean, the story, there's a lot of parallels, bro. Like, you know, this is a club not started by, you know, this is just normal folks trying to build a club and identity. And this is the same kind of story and trajectory that, you know, the Raiders had in their upbringing. And then the identity, right? Like the cleanliness of like the black and the silver and the sophistication with that, the representation in the logo itself of that blue collar work ethic, and then the strive for excellence, right? Like all of this is it's so good. It is one of the best brands. You know, it's up there for me with like the A's and the Yankees and the, you know, like the Lakers. these brands are iconic, and that's what we're trying to strive for, is like iconicism in a way that actually has Oakland in its name. And it's not just roots, it's Oakland roots, right? And that's one thing I want to harp on. Like, we will never exist if we're not in Oakland. And the identity doesn't exist if it's not in the name. A lot of other football teams, baseball teams, et cetera, can dip because they are just the Raiders. They are just the A's. They are just the whatever, and they can tack on any city. Nah, like, I think real culture changes when you have like artifacts in the community and the real work is done, and the brand starts to become culturally shifting. And the Raiders did a great job while they're in Oakland. I think that's why a lot of people are very upset. And we took over the facility, bro. I'm sorry for doing that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Hey, Edreece, sorry, I jumped on a little late. Good to meet you, bro.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
You mentioned storytelling for the brand. I think storytelling is such a underutilized element of marketing in sports. The NFL has kind of stumbled into being this giant that no matter what happens, like, they just have a great TV product and they don't really need to do any marketing. We've seen basketball kind of struggle with telling stories. They're kind of stuck in this like shockwave of Twitter headlines. But I think soccer, you might have mentioned this, is just such a great way to start that. It's kind of built for it, and Oakland Roots still kind of a growing organization. What was that process like in trying to build a story that represents Oakland?
Yeah, I think you have to do it at the foundational level. So, you know, when you're a large brand and you've existed for quite some time, I think it's tough to like relearn people's perception of that brand, you know, especially if they've been around for a very long time. I mean, an example could be, you know, I don't know, a New York Mets or like the Diamondbacks or something, trying to all of a sudden be like the Brooklyn Nets, right? And having this like cool urban sophistication. I mean, it just doesn't work to transition that way. Like, you have to establish your identity in the early stages. And I think a lot of these teams do. And then they get so caught in the weeds of the money-making business, which is what you talked about, that they forget about what actually enables people to really be passionate about it. And that's storytelling and community, man. It's culture. And the issue here is like, people probably asking like, man, this cat's tripping because, you know, there's diehard sports fans everywhere. Well, yeah, there's diehard sports fans everywhere because we don't got options, right? Like, it costs $300-400 million to get into the NBA. It costs that to get into the MLS. So what the fuck do you mean? Like, I gotta root for this team. You know, do I want to? Maybe not. You know, but I'm almost forced to because this is the only option I have, you know? And that for me is like the flawed monopolization mentality that has happened in American sports that is not existent in Europe, right? So in Europe, you have like this amazing promotion relegation methodology where, you know, you win, and based off of your merits, you escalate and you rise, and your existence is really based on how well you connect to the people in the fan base. If you don't, they all show up at the stadium revolting, and then all of a sudden ownership changes, management changes, you know, there's accountability. That don't happen in the NFL. In the NFL, you can blackball a Colin Kaepernick and that's it. And everyone turns a blind eye because the next season's around the corner and, you know, Tom Brady is killing it, right? So like, this is the issue, is that I think there's a lack of accountability when it comes to some of this. And for us, it's like, we're trying to challenge that, man. We're trying to make it feel like this is a common person's club. This is real shit. You know, it's everyone is human. And I think the greatest form of intelligence and the best form of marketing is empathy. And, you know, like, storytelling is the literal tradition of human nature. Like, this is how we pass stories on to each other. This is how we connect to one another. And that is what we try to embody in our storytelling process, man. I hope that answers it. It's kind of like a intangible thing. It's a bit of magic, you know. I don't know if many people understand it, but yeah.
No, you make an excellent. I'm in marketing too, so I'm very fascinated by your story. You mentioned the billionaire part of it, and the story for Oakland Roots is so different than a newer club, an expansion club, right? Like an NYCFC, where Sheikh Mansour just puts them in New York as an expansion of Manchester City, right? This isn't the case. Or LAFC, which has an ownership group, I mean, they could just go get Gareth Bale and Giorgio Chiellini just like that, right? It's a different story. But it's a fascinating one. You lead with like a community centric message, and I think that connects to empathy. You are trying to empathize with the end consumer. What's the thinking behind leading with a community based approach?
Mm-hmm. So this comes back to, I think, who our co-founding group is, right? My philosophy in life, and maybe this is a really great question, bro. Like, it's gonna peel back several layers of who we are. My philosophy is like, if you exist, you only have one chance to exist in this life, not only as a human being, but certainly in business, right? 99.9% of businesses fail within the first 3 to 4 years, you know? And so you have one opportunity to exist. You have to lean into whatever it is that is your identity. Furthermore, you know, I believe that, and this is me personally, I don't ever want to partake in anything that does not impact humanity. Like, it's a waste of time for me. Like, why would I even just try to do something if it's not even impacting 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, right? And so my philosophy has always been like, if we're going to do this, we're going to impact as many people in this town as possible. And the way we're doing that is to be one of the first purpose-led sports organizations in the nation. What does that mean? Well, we have a chief purpose officer, first in America of its kind, sitting at the executive level, who is also on the board and is also a co-founder. So decision-making on how, you know, I mean, man, first year I was buying furniture from IKEA. And though like IKEA does have some benefit locally, obviously employs local folks. Like, I remember I was debating in the office on why I should have purchased it from a small like mom and pop shop instead, you know? And so that thinking of like the Oakland first always, that is our tagline, is in every decision that we make. And our chief purpose officer, Mike Geddes, who has a tremendous history of impact and in soccer specifically, is helping us make those decisions from a partnership perspective to our marketing decisions, to our storytelling. I mean, every partnership, we even flip that script, man. Like, most sports teams will probably be like, here's your asset in the stadium. Here's your video scoreboard graphic. Here is, you know, the read in game or whatever. Here's a commercial. We try to ask the partners, what is meaningful to you, right? Like, can we do a street soccer tournament at Dia de los Muertos and activate a small-sided, you know, pitch thing where, you know, all of a sudden now you have thousands of youth interacting with the sport and we're spreading positive messages. Like, the partnership thinking is also completely different in that we try to take it to another layer of impact in the community. We are the only organization in the United States that donates 1% of our ticket revenues and staff salaries to social impact causes locally. So everything kicks back to our purpose partners, which is like a special relationship we've built with nonprofit organizations in the soccer space. Soccer Without Borders, who works with refugees. My Youth Soccer provides free access camps. Street Soccer USA, who, you know, activates local urban spaces for people to actually kick a ball. Lack of space in Oakland is a problem. So, you know, they're addressing that. List goes on and on. And so, you know, we're not just like a nonprofit that sits on the side and it's like a foundation of whatever club. It's like literally who we are. And our investor group of 42 plus people are comprised of that DNA. This is exactly what we lead with. We don't lead with, hey, man, you're going to make a lot of money. No, like, sure, you know, the value of the club rises with our growth, but this is far greater and far more important than, you know, a return on your investment, because that doesn't happen in sports. You know, it's a, you know, and we're also different in that we have multiple investors, you know, 42 plus, predominantly Oakland Bay Area based. And, you know, yeah, so that's kind of how we're leaning into it and are trying to be different.
I see what you mean by trying to be the Barcelona of the U.S. It's not just the on-field success. It's their tagline is more than a club. And it's, if you read back their history, which obviously I'm sure but they have a deep social impact on Spain. They've been part of, resistance movements against fascism in the past. So they're definitely more than a club. And I can definitely see the vision here as well.
Absolutely. And we need a club like this. And America does. So it's not just Oakland that needs it. It's not California. The United States needs a radical change in the way we think about sports identities. And if more people do it, we'll start to realize that sports teams are community assets, and they have to be that way. And we have a bit of unlearning to do, but we're trying to lead the way at the very least. So.
Yeah, and speaking of radical change, you touched on this a little bit. I know, pro rel is a big discussion here in the U.S. People are very passionate about it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can answer this, but how do you feel about pro rel?
I mean, look, I think everyone, at some point is enthused by the idea. Personally, I think competition is fantastic. I think merit-based system is fantastic. However, I'm also like, I realize the reality of the circumstance, and I'm like, well, you got to play the game in order to change the game, right? And this is for everything in life. I think people tend to shut things off or close doors because it's just not aligned with whatever it is their thinking is. But sometimes it takes a little bit of ability to almost like look at it and say, hey, maybe collectively we can do this, or we can change it, or we can whatever. And look, my philosophy, bro, and to answer it very bluntly, is like, I believe it should always be club over league, period. A lot of clubs in markets place the value of the league significantly higher than their own value. And whenever people try to ask us this exact question, they're like, well, what's your plans? Like, do you ever want to go MLS? Do you ever want to do this? Do that? I'm like, no, like none of that. Like, our goal is to create a club and an asset for Oakland. Right now, the pathway to playing professional for us that is sustainable and allows us to play it and do it well is USL Championship. It is one of the fastest growing leagues in the world. It has the biggest kind of base of soccer teams in a league, from Division 2 to Division 3 to Division 4. They've even publicly stated that they're interested in promotion relegation, given that they have one of the largest bases of teams. So we are at the cusp. I think in the next 5 years, you'll see this start to really become a reality for everyone in a conversation. And for us, it's not pinning our success on whether or not it's going to happen. It's, hey, let's put our entire focus and commitment into Oakland. Let's ensure that we're growing as much as Oakland wants us to grow. And, I don't know if you guys saw, but like 2 days ago, we announced our interest to explore a stadium, because with the addition of Oakland Soul, the demand for the product has grown so much that, we're forced to look into new opportunities that don't, impede on current athletic program at Laney College, which we love and enjoy, and has allowed us to be who we are.
And so Oakland Soul, just to clarify for folks that don't know, is the women's club that's associated with Oakland Roots.
Yeah, which we launched, a couple months ago, and has been amazing. So yeah, man, I hope that answers the question. It's like, we're excited about the future. We care more about our success here locally than what the hell happens on a national scale, but we're here for it, and I'm about merit-based stuff, and we'll see if that shakes out.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I get it. It's, you want to be sustainable, and it's not about what the MLS is doing or what USL Championship is doing. It's about what Oakland Roots is doing. And I think just to put my 2 cents in, I do think eventually pro rel is the way to go. But I think now, as teams are still building fan bases and identities, I think right now the status quo is where we should be, but who knows where soccer is going to be, in 5-10 years in this country.
Yeah. I mean, the other issue too is like United States is so large and vast, right? Europe is, is condensed, and there's populations that are like pushed into what the size of Texas, right? Like you have 9 countries in the size of Texas. And so, the travel, right? The sustainability of that, the expenses related to that, infrastructure, stadiums, right? Like there's stadiums in Europe that are like hundreds of years old. It's built into the DNA. We don't have soccer specific stadiums. I don't even know if we have one here in the Bay Area. Like I can't think of one in the East Bay. Probably
Not in the
Calvert.
East Bay, but
Yeah.
the Earthquakes do have. I mean, they
Earthquakes
opened
do.
Avaya was at 2013, 14, which is
Exactly.
beautiful. I don't know if you've been down there, but it's a gorgeous little stadium.
Exactly, man. No, San Jose has that. The South Bay has opportunities, but we look at the East Bay area. Berkeley's, Edwards Stadium is a college soccer facility, but there's not much else here that is for soccer specifically. So we have some work to do, and we're not the only market. Every market in the United States, I think, has to think about soccer more seriously. So.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing you were about the size of America. I was just in Europe, and my family friends were like, "How big is America exactly?" They want to know in distance, and I'm like, "It's 4,500 kilometers," and their head explodes. They're like, "What? That's like 2,000 miles."
Yeah.
So the growth of soccer. Khaled posed this is it's still a huge market opportunity. I think in America, if you talk to like my dad, he said, they've been saying soccer is growing since I got here in 1980. Which goes to show that yes, like it's the biggest sport in the world. This is a huge country, and there's cities building, right? Like you see the Seattle Sonic, what are they called? The Sounders. They built their stadium specifically for soccer, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Well,
a number of teams have. Yeah.
Yep. So, like what I'm trying to get at is there's a knock on, I guess, youth development in America. It's just different. Like the path to it is different than other sports. Like what's your take on that? Is that changing? The system is not fleshed out yet, but what's your take on youth development, and that helps in combination with community and things like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I will caveat the whole like point about we've been saying soccer is growing in America for a long time, but I honestly can tell you, man, the infrastructure of soccer in America is actually like significantly shorter of a period of time than compared, to Europe or Asia, where it's existed for hundreds of years. It's kind of in our DNA. The 94 World Cup or 96, I forgot the exact year.
94, yeah.
94. I was born in 89. That was in 94. Man, like that was, in my opinion, the moment for at least people in America to go, oh, wow, maybe we should take it seriously. It existed, but it was like, all right, let's take it more seriously. And the let's take it more seriously starts with the youth. And the issue with that is it's a pay to play model. So, a great example, man, is Iceland. I think their population is around the 2 to 3 million mark, if I'm not mistaken, might be wrong, but they played America in the World Cup and were able to beat the United States, a population of 300 million plus. 2 million, 300 million, right? The math is like, how is this possible? You can't find a pool of players that can beat, Iceland. But the trick here is that Iceland actually invested in accessible resources in every kind of hot spot of soccer in their country. So, imagine in Atlanta does this really well. Like they create accessible soccer fields that are like free for everyone to be able to play. Specifically Black and brown kids, man. Like Black and brown kids in under-resourced areas aren't able to pay $2,000 a year to play for a club. So what happens is there's a large demographic of young, really talented kids that just never have that platform that then take a different path in their life. And it's too late at 16, 17, 18. Playing in the local, tournaments doesn't turn into a professional athlete. Like you have to have structure, you have to be able to go to college and showcase and all these things. You don't have resources, man. I remember growing up, like I thought if I just megged enough people, I would become professional. like, like that was my barometer for professionalism. And my family didn't know different. They're like, he just keeps scoring goals and, you know, you keep megging people and you don't have to worry about your diet or sleep or, you know, working out, and you can have a little belly and still be, you know, a professional team. No, man, like, you know, refugee communities, immigrant communities, you know, Black and brown communities don't have the proper education and resources that, say, privileged folk do in suburban neighborhoods. And soccer has become a suburban sport because of the commercialization of it. And it's about access and equity for me, man. Like, we have to be able to lift the barriers and find better identification tools, better resources for Black and brown kids in America. And at that point in time, guess what happens? We skyrocket. We become the Brazils of soccer, you know? But we just don't have that clear pathway yet, right? So
yeah, I firmly believe, I've said this many times, that in my lifetime, I mean, if I live to be an old man, inshallah, that the US will win a World Cup in my lifetime. With because of things like this, because of clubs like Oakland Roots and all these academies that come up to, and the decrease in that pay to play model and being more grassroots and finding hidden talent. I mean, there's no reason that, again, a country of 300 plus million people that love soccer, hopefully eventually, you know, wouldn't be that successful. And I think we're on the right track.
Brother, on this point, just to like beat it to death, you know, the Bay Area has the same, if you take the entirety of the Bay Area, it's the same population of Iceland. So like, you could technically, if you really wanted, you could have the national team just come out of the Bay Area, of which we have incredible products like everywhere, right? And I can name 5 or 6 cats that are in the MLS that are Oakland born, Bay Area raised, right? So, I mean, come on, like something's missing here. And furthermore, you know, this is why we call ourselves a sports club, and Barcelona is like, you know, the epitomization of what we're trying to do is like, why not have, you know, the next F1 driver be a Black and brown kid out of East Oakland, California, West Oakland, California, right? So it's like, it's challenging the way we think about, quote unquote, access to sports, and then representation and storytelling. And, you know, I think like for me, watching Serena do what she does is like motivated me more than ever the past 2 days to see her do, like, this is a Compton born and raised woman, Black woman in America at the highest level, beating the number 2 at 40 years old. There's plenty of Serenas, plenty of Lewis Hamiltons, plenty of, you know, Kobe's and MJ's and LeBron's out there. We just have Messi's, right? We just have to find them and create pathways so that they're visible.
And lift those barriers, like you said, and talk, you know, work on the access part of it for sure.
You have a this great philosophy embedded in community dynamics, and you glossed on this earlier about value. You know, as a co-founder, you have a big investment group. I'm sure there is a balance between this staying true to your roots and sticking to that community dynamic, and you also have to increase the value of the club. For those unfamiliar with how that works, how can a club like Oakland Roots increase value, and how do you balance that with a community-centric philosophy?
Brilliant question. So here's how everyone else thinks. They think that revenue, if you were to ask any sports organization, how do you prioritize these things? Revenue or financial sustainability, it's a better way of putting it. Financial sustainability, brand exposure, community engagement, soccer, right? Those 4 components are predominantly like the business of soccer. They would say financial sustainability is up top, soccer, brand exposure, then community, right? And then the community and purpose efforts turn into like the quote unquote whatever foundation. And then it's like one person and it's a subset of the work. And it's a social post every quarter about how you donated $5,000 to whatever, right? Like that's the depth of thinking. We flip that shit on its back. So our prioritization is purpose. It's community engagement. It's financial sustainability, or branding, financial sustainability, soccer. Because at the end of the day, man, yes, we are a winning organization. Yes, we want to win championships, be very clear. But from a business perspective, you are going to win and lose over time. That's just like a fact. But if you can win in brand engagement and reach and community impact and engagement, you're going to have a community that supports you even when you lose, right? And so when you put purpose first, the big misconception is that revenue does not follow. We've proved that revenue can follow. So as an example, we have to date packed stadiums every single game. Do you think that happens because we don't value community, or we do? You know what I mean? Do you think that happens because we don't show up in the community, or because we do, right? And so it's a flawed way of thinking if we think of it as separate things. We believe revenue comes from purpose, comes from community engagement, comes from being present. And, we have the second highest merch revenues in the league right now. It's our second year in the league. We're number 2, right? If you compare our numbers with some of, the NBA, we're like top 12 in the NBA when it comes to merch numbers. And we're second.
That's incredible.
Your team, yeah. Right? But none of this happens because we just place value on the money. We put community and impact first. We put Oakland first, and then it follows, right? And this is proof in the pudding. Value comes from, ticket sales. It comes from partnerships. It comes from, the ability to continue to grow our database and our fan base. Partnerships is a big part of our revenue drivers. And if we were not purpose oriented and we did not differentiate by leaning into impact, or have a cool, quote unquote, the coolest soccer brand in America, dubbed by 442, not me, it's 442.
It's hard to argue.
Brands wouldn't want to invest in you, right? So again, this is another example of how partnerships, our ticket sales revenue, the demand of the brand, the database grows because we care about humans, right? And that's the model we're trying to prove to people. And value in sports is an interesting thing. It's generally like 3 or 4x the revenue you bring in, and our goal is to try to be as sustainable as possible so that we exist for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that means to bridge the gap between revenues and expenses as much as possible in the next 3 years so that we can get to a place where, it makes sense to function, It's very difficult to go from zero to a sports entity in the world without large expenditure. It's just the reality of every business in tech as well. There's like this 3 to 5 year period until sustainability. And we're getting very, very close, but I like to say the value of the club has been rising despite, our margins, or despite, our sustainability efforts. It's growing at an incredible pace, and we hope that we can get sustainability to match that, over time.
Yeah. And I think, not to bag on this team, because this is, one of my favorite teams growing up, but we're seeing kind of the opposite thing happening just up the road with the Oakland A's, right? They have brand recognition, they have an incredible history, but they've left the community behind in a lot of ways. They haven't prioritized building relationships with fans. And then on top of that, they're not very good right now. So, that's why you're seeing empty ballparks. Even on a Friday night, you're seeing, 8,000 people in a 40,000 seat ballpark. So it's really interesting seeing that the case studies, the differences between what you guys are prioritizing and the type of turnout that you're getting. And again, what a team in Oakland with a much longer history, a much deeper, identity there because of how long they've been there and the experience and the negative things that are happening there. So, and I think about the things that you've said about building, the identity and putting purpose first. Like, I'll give you an example. When you guys first started your inaugural season, I was still living on the East Coast. I got hit up to buy season tickets. I had no intention of coming to a game because, I wasn't local, but I was, there's a couple reasons. Like, this is a dope ass brand with a dope vision. Edreece is my guy. So I was like, I'm going to buy season tickets. I had no connection to it. I had no plans of being there. But again, because of the other stuff that you talked about, the vision, the community, the identity being like authentically Oakland, I was like, all right, I have to be a part of this in some way or another. So,
bro, you know,
isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? There's 6 million SMBs in America, and this like SMB philosophy where word of mouth is the best form of marketing is amazing, isn't it?
I mean, brother, to that point, to date, as a professional sports team, we've probably spent less than $20,000 in paid advertising. So like, just really think about that, all right? Like, less than $20,000 in paid advertising.
Does that even get you like an ad on KNBR or something?
I mean, it's
drive
like,
time radio.
Yeah, I mean, y'all know, but like, man, you do a billboard outside the Coliseum, like just a normal static billboard. It's like 12 racks, dude. Like, we've spent less than $20,000 to date. And to your guys' point about word of mouth, man, it is the most vital and is the most powerful tool of marketing. Like, our game days have to have a net promoter score of greater than 80, or we're not turning fans into promoters. And this comes from my experience at Apple when I helped co-manage 3 or 4 stores. There's no advertising. There's no Facebook ad on, hey, come visit this Apple store. It's all experience-based. I mean, Disney, man, like, Disney is the greatest example of like how to make magic and how to care about an experience and how to make people happy. There's enough shit going on in our lives. Like, we're not spending money to go to a thing and then just be like experiencing something horrible. That's not a good product. See, this goes back to the point of like, if I have no option, I have to support something shitty. It's because it's the only thing and it's not going away. So I have to keep going to it. And it's just going to keep adding bullshit to my life. That's not what we want to do.
Yeah. And these days people have more options than ever before. So it's harder than ever to capture folks. So
exactly. That's why experience is everything, man. Happiness is everything. We ride the happiness wave no matter what, man, because it's infectious.
Khaled, do you have any other questions for Edreece?
Well, this is kind of a two-parter, but
Yep.
What's the hardest thing about this journey, and what's the coolest thing? I mean, have you had like a fanboy moment where you've met someone like super dope that you looked up to, or a player or something? I know like Drogba, for example, is a co-owner of Phoenix Rising. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I would have geeked out if I met him, but have you had any experiences like that?
Yeah, man, I'd say just start with the first question. Man, I mean, everything's difficult. Trying to be iconic and trying to create something that is long lasting and impactful in one of the most polarizing, cities in the world, in Oakland, California, where everyone holds you accountable if you slip up even a smidge, which is partially why I love it so much, because of that accountability. You have a responsibility when you're repping something that has Oakland in it. And though that's been difficult, I would say that has been the biggest honor and blessing, because I wake up every day like, man, I actually get to represent this amazing city. I believe it's one of the greatest places on earth. People don't know that yet, but we're going to take this shit to them. And that's my philosophy. And I will say, man, like the fanboy moment, real interesting is last night, my wifey and I, we went out to dinner, and it hit me last night more than ever what we were doing. And it was in the most organic, probably, I don't even know if people listening will even get it, but we were at dinner, man, and the owner of the restaurant somehow recognized my involvement in the club, or just knew that I was involved, and like sent drinks our way and said, thank you for bringing professional soccer to Oakland. And for me, like, wow. It didn't hit like nothing has hit like that before, because it made me realize that like, wow, like this shit is actually here. People are actually fucking with it, and they care that much to like recognize someone that's part of it. And man, I will carry that small moment with me forever. I mean, I don't take it for granted. Like, that makes me want to work 10x harder to make sure this shit lives up to its expectations. So,
I mean, Oakland is a special place, and I think especially with the teams leaving and a lot of the changes that are happening there with the gentrification and some of the identity and history that might be lost, with the new residents, just everything, just so much transition happening there. I think people probably like that restaurant owner, and a lot of, Oakland lifers and natives are probably holding on so tightly to their identity and anything that's like authentically Oakland. And I think with everything that you've told us, everything that you guys have done so far, we can say, without a shadow of a doubt that you guys are authentically Oakland. And that's something really special these days.
Appreciate that. There are amazing moments like, getting to rock with Marshawn and, others that like, again, it's one of those moments where like, these cats are also so humble, bro, that they're like, they're just normal cats. When he calls, it's just a normal conversation. Like, but it's the common folk, the folk that like live here every day, grind their ass off, put the effort. Like that's the special thing for me, And so I appreciate you guys recognizing it and giving us the platform. And we definitely won't stop, man, for sure.
So, but before we go, Osama always has his food questions loaded up. So,
yeah, you talked about happiness, and food makes me really happy. I know you're Afghan, and I grew up in Union City, so I went to eat in Fremont a lot, which is I believe the pinnacle of Afghani cuisine. Mm-hmm. I went to Europe a couple of times and found Afghan food in Amsterdam. I had some great Afghan food in Munich a couple of weeks ago. So I'm a huge fan. When Edreece is hungry, where do you go eat? That's question one.
Oh, man. Well, Afghan food is comfort food for sure. But if I'm looking for a spot in Oakland, you're going to catch me at the local Guadalajara taco truck, man. Ain't nothing going to beat going down to Guadalajara in the Fruitvale, standing in line, paying cash for a burrito, and then that shit just hits different, man. That's the one for me, for sure.
And are you the Afghan guy, Fremont Afghan?
Oh, I love the Afghan, man. I love the Afghan. That's like obviously OG Fremont. Fremont's like the little Kabul. So we definitely, that's the go-to spot. 100%.
Yeah, we're the same age, so we absolutely know. I'm sure we have some people in common for sure.
Sure.
Favorite Afghani dish is my last important question.
Oh man, I'd say I rock with mantu and ashak a lot. A lot of people are divided between the two, but I love them both, man. It's like the Afghani version of a dumpling for people that are listening and need to visualize. And the meat is the mantu, which is grounded meat with onions, and the ashak is leek, which is kind of like the poor Afghan man's dumpling, which I love a lot, man. So yeah.
It's funny. We were at this place in Munich a couple of weeks ago, and my wife orders the mantu, and they're like, "We don't have mantu." Which, first of all, shame on them for running out of that. But second, I was like, "Well, baby, you haven't heard of ashag. You're in for a treat, because there you go. It's very similar."
Exactly. Leek is probably easier to find than ground meat. So, yeah, but I love both of those, man. And the beauty of our cuisine is that we're in the heart of Asia. And so historically, you have every empire and every, country's influence kind of in our dish and in our identity. So highly recommend people listening to go check out the Al-Wanan or even Kamdish in Oakland. I live right across the street from Kamdish, and it's hit a lot on several occasions. So highly recommend.
Speaking of Oakland and that regional thing, Yemeni people have also taken over the city of Oakland,
big time.
And similar to Afghani food, very unique spices that you won't find even in other Arab-based food. Tremendous.
This is very true, but we have a strong Yemenis population, Palestinian population. Reem, shout out to Reem, man. She is like Oakland legend. She had an amazing bakery out of the Fruitvale that recently ported over to Frisco. But she's like, man, amazing woman, Palestinian cook, probably arguably one of the best in the Bay. And then we also have amazing Ethiopian cuisine here, bro. You guys, next time you're in the Bay Area, head over to Oakland, try a Ethiopian or Eritrean spot. There's plenty of folks here that do well. So
hell yeah, dinner time.
Well, cool, man. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and talking to us about Oakland Roots, Oakland Soul, Project 510, and everything that you guys have been doing. So where can folks find you guys on social and all that?
Yeah, I mean, search up Oakland Roots, our men's side professional soccer team. Oakland Soul most recently launched, also searchable, our women's side, and then Project 510. When you're searching on social, it's with the letter O, not 0. So Project 510, purposefully done for branding purposes. But yeah, man, super blessed. And again, thank you guys for giving us the platform. I think love to look back on this 10 years from now when we're the biggest sports club and remember these conversations. So
and we're the biggest sports pod, so I like
exactly.
it. And you can catch Oakland Roots on ESPN Plus. In the USL Championship. I know you guys have a home game coming up this weekend at Laney College. So good luck with that. Good luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, congrats, man. All your success and wish you more success in the future.
Thank you very much, you guys. Assalamu alaikum. And hopefully, you guys can come to a game anytime. Let me know when you're in town.
For sure.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you. We appreciate it.